Hello and welcome to Cardboard History. I'm David, and today I want to do another episode in my Ken Burns collection. If you haven't seen any of these videos before, the Ken Burns project is a project that I'm undertaking to collect a card of every player or person who is mentioned in the Ken Burns documentary and accompanying book. That comes out to around 465 players from the first 9 innings, and that is what I'm focusing this collection on right now. So today, I want to share a story of a player whose card I picked up at the National. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. These famous words spoken by Lou Gehrig as he gave his infamous speech following his diagnosis of ALS have rung throughout the history of sports as a sentiment of courage and optimism in the midst of difficult circumstances. 13 years later, similar words were spoken by a much lesser-known player when he said that I consider myself to be very lucky. This player had just gone blind in both eyes and had recently, in the previous years, lost his 16-year-old son to an unknown illness. This player is George Toporcer, or more well-known as Specs Toporcer. So he was not the prototypical baseball player. In fact, when he made his major league debut in April of 1921, the 5'10", 135 bespectacled Toporcer became the first, or is at least believed to have been the first non-pitcher to wear glasses while playing Major League Baseball. Now, his card from his rookie year, which I'll show here, is his E121 American Caramel Series of 120. And it depicts this peculiar-looking Toporcer donning a smile of optimism, which fueled his unlikely rise to the major. Toporcer was born the sixth of 7 children in 1899 to a cobbler and his wife living on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. And growing up, his brothers and sisters were all athletes, and he kind of stood out from the group because of his poor vision and his wiry frame. He was not often picked in school for baseball activities, and this exclusion, his biographer David Skelton notes, really drove him to learn the game of baseball more and to improve. So in the midst of adversity, he saw it as an opportunity to grow and to learn more. At the age of 13, he took a job at a local saloon where he would post scores as they came in from around Major League Baseball. And he was actually part of the documentary for Ken Burns because of the role that he played in posting the score for the 1912 World Series. And this is the World Series where Fred Snodgrass infamously muffed the fly ball. And that caused the Giants to lose. Toporcer was a Giants fan, and so he not only had to recount this occurrence to all of those who were standing by and watching, but had to come to grips with the loss of his favorite team. He was later interviewed about the experience, and he stated, quote, "I broke down and found it almost impossible to announce the tragic events to the hushed crowd. After it was all over, I sat on the platform silently, reading and rereading the doleful news on the tape, as though repeated reading would erase the awful words." So, as a young child, he had that awesome opportunity to really be involved in the game of baseball as a reporter of sorts who would read the scores off and let those who were trying to keep up with the score know what was happening. The following year, he was not able to return to his job because his father passed away. So at the age of 14, he dropped out of school after receiving only an 8th grade education and helped the family run the business. Now, his family had a high value on athletics, and him and his brothers continued to pursue athletic pursuits outside of their job. And he continued to develop his baseball skills until he eventually caught the eye of a semi-pro team and played for a semi-pro team in Brooklyn. And he played fantastically for that semi-pro team, so much so that he caught the eye of the Rochester minor league team that was part of the International League. And when they went to sign him, they weren't able to work out a deal because he was still under contract for the semi-pro team, and his mother was very ill, and he was not able to leave Brooklyn. So his mother actually passed away later that year, and afterwards he left the semi-pro team to play for another team in Orange, New Jersey, and then eventually was signed to a minor league contract. It was this time with Syracuse that he was signed to a contract. In the same year that he signed on to play for Syracuse in the International League, the Syracuse team signed on to be a Double-A affiliate of the St. Louis Cardinals. So his first year in the minor leagues, he was able to go to spring training, and he caught the eye of the Cardinals, Branch Rickey, and the ownership there, and actually made the roster and played some games at the beginning of the season due to the injury bug that had affected several players. He took over for Rogers Hornsby at second base when Hornsby moved out to the outfield to fill in for someone else. And then eventually, when the team was healthy, he was sent back to Syracuse because he wasn't getting the at-bats that he needed. But this first glimpse into the majors really gave him a taste of Major League Baseball, and also provided him with the opportunity to meet his wife. At a game at the Polo Grounds, he spotted, it was Madeline Pilgard during a game at the Polo Grounds. Madeline was an avid Giants fan and had been since she was a child, and Toporcer bonded with her over their shared roots, both being from New York, and the following year they were married. They had a daughter together as well as a son. After 1921, in 1922, he made the Cardinals team and became a regular fixture in their lineup. He played the infield and really became more of a utility man, moving all over wherever he was needed. It was by far his best batting year in the league, and he continued to provide the much-needed spark for that team. A few years later, he would establish himself as a clutch hitter, coming in handy for the Cardinals in the pennant race, where his RBI double helped them clinch the pennant in 1926, and then they would go on to win the Cardinals' first World Series that year. However, it was just a few years later, with changes in management, that Toporcer was no longer able to remain at the majors. Branch Rickey had seen in him the makings of a future manager because of his robust baseball knowledge. But when Branch Rickey left and other managers took over, they didn't share the same sentiment. And eventually he was sent back to the minors to play for the Rochester Red Wings. And it was really with Rochester that he had this fantastic minor league career. He was in Rochester starting in 1928 when he got demoted from the majors, and that year the team won the circuit championship for the International League, and it was the first of 4 championships in a row that they won with Toporcer on the team. The following 2 years, not only did they win the championship, but Toporcer was also named the league MVP. In 1929, the second of that 4-year run, at the end of the series, there was what's known as the Toporcer incident, where Toporcer disagreed with a call at the plate, a called third strike, which ended the game in the bottom of the 9th. And he not only made sure that the umpire knew how he felt about it, but also encouraged the crowd to get involved and to go after the umpires, and creating pandemonium in the stands. The league manager at that point, or the league commissioner, director, not only fined Toporcer and the manager for Rochester, but also suspended Toporcer for a year. And it was only the intervention of Branch Rickey, who appealed the ruling, that was able to get the suspension removed, and it allowed Toporcer to play the following year, which he also won the MVP that year. He spent a little bit of time managing at Rochester, and then bounced around between quite a few leagues. He would play and manage in the minor leagues quite a bit, and would also work with several organizations as the farm league director and help develop players. He used his robust baseball knowledge to really help players as they were trying to come up and to create a unified system of coaching throughout all levels of a organization's farm team. So that way, as players progressed, they wouldn't be taught something different at the next level, but they would have a cohesive instruction which matched the direction of the major league manager. So, 1934 through 51, he was the farm director for the Red Sox, also helped do some managing and farm directing for the Pirates and the White Sox. And in 1948, he had some issues with his eye where he had a retinal detachment, and he had to have surgery to repair that, and the surgery was unsuccessful, so he ended up going blind in his left eye, but continued to manage and coach. And in 1951, he won Manager of the Year for the AAA Buffalo Bisons. But his work with that team was remarkable. He had brought them from last place in the league and had led them to a winning record that year, bringing just his invaluable insight into the league. But he was not able to be present to receive his award because that same year, around July time, he began experiencing the same issues in his right eye with retinal detachment. Had the surgery again, it was again unsuccessful, so he had gone blind. So at this point, he knew that his career in baseball as a manager was really over. If he couldn't see, he wouldn't be able to direct the players. And he shifted his focus a little bit from being on the field to see what he could do for the game of baseball off the field. It was at this point that he gave that quote that he considers himself to be very lucky. And it was just his overwhelming optimism. As you can tell from this card, he's just has this giant grin on his face, which can be really described as his optimism of he's in the league. This is his first card. He's excited to be there and continuing to overcome all the things that he overcame in his life. After he went blind, he, together with his wife, wrote an autobiography, which he dictated and she wrote. And then together they traveled the country. He would give speeches as a goodwill ambassador for the game of baseball and try to encourage people to get involved and share stories of his career. And he lived a very long life. He passed away in 1989 at the age of 90 and really just made a significant impact on many players in the game of baseball. So that is George Toporcer, better known as Specs. And I really like this card. I think it just captures some genuine emotion, and his glasses are definitely kind of give him a goofy look. But it is one card that I was really excited to pick up from the National. So hopefully you enjoyed this and learned a little bit about Specs Toporcer, a player who is not well known. He had a short stint in the league, but nevertheless made a pretty big impact. He was eventually elected into the International League Hall of Fame and is also in the Rochester Sports Hall of Fame. So had a great career and a great impact on many players. Thank you for watching Cardboard History.